Welcome back, everybody. It's Zach here, bringing you guys another fantasy football video. Hopefully, you guys had a good weekend of drafts here. I'm recording this on Labor Day right now. You guys will get this like at midnight Labor Day, so I guess going into Tuesday. And most of us are probably done with all of our drafts. If you guys are not, I know that maybe you guys have maybe some drafts on Tuesday or Wednesday before the league kicks off on Thursday. But in general, most of us are done with our drafts, so hopefully those went well for you. This video, I'll be going over 8 players, try to touch on people at each position that are going undrafted in most leagues that I still think are worth taking a look at the waiver wire on. I know, maybe you finish your draft, look at the bottom of your bench, and you'll realize you aren't super thrilled about some of the guys you grabbed. I think all the guys I talk about here are going to be really solid options for you guys on the waiver wire and could really be some guys that could be difference makers for you over the course of the season. So hopefully you guys find this useful. If there are any players I didn't mention that you think I should have talked about, feel free to let me know in the comments as well. Any agreements, let me know there as well. Just disclosure, for the sake of this video, in order to make the list, you had to be rostered in 50% or less of leagues, so that was sort of the cutoff here, but it's really, I try to dig deeper for some of these people as well, just so that, we're finding guys that are available in all of your leagues and all that. So, yeah, hopefully you guys enjoy that, and yeah, with that, let's just get into the first player here. So starting things off with the lone quarterback on this list, I'm going to highlight Matthew Stafford, who's currently rostered in 34% of ESPN leagues. He opens week 1 with a game in Detroit, and that is currently the game slated to have the highest over-under. They have a 51-point total, so for those of you who aren't familiar with betting markets or that, basically they're projecting 51 total points to be scored in that game. This is a game in Detroit. It's in a dome. It's a really great environment. We know the Lions are going to put up a ton of points as well, and Stafford's going to have to match that. Stafford's obviously got elite weapons in Puka, Cooper Kupp, Kyren Williams. Everybody's healthy right now as well, so this is perfectly set up for Matthew Stafford to put up a really solid week 1. And if you happen to punt on the quarterback position, I think there are very few streaming options better than Matthew Stafford in week 1. So if you desperately need someone to start right away, I think Stafford's a guy you could use. And honestly, he's someone that we've seen be good for fantasy before. He could put up a stretch of games where he's super relevant over the course of the entire season, and he definitely should be rostered in a higher percentage of leagues right now, if for nothing else, just the reason that he could be a really solid streaming option right out of the gate here, week 1. Next up, we've got Jalil McLaughlin, currently rostered in 39.6% of ESPN leagues. I personally believe that McLaughlin's probably going to be one of, if not the most popular waiver wire ads after week 1. We know that historically speaking, Sean Payton absolutely loves utilizing the running back position out of the backfield as pass catchers. And then on top of that, Bo Nix has a very real tendency to look to check the ball down. It's really a match made in heaven in terms of how many receptions we expect this running back or backfield to have in Denver. And Jalil McLaughlin is set up to be potentially the best pass catcher this backfield has to offer. I do think Javonte is going to be involved. He'll probably be the first and second down guy, and McLaughlin's going to come on the field for third downs, passing down work, 2-minute drill. I think there's going to be plenty of that opportunity here for McLaughlin to be a guy that sees 15 opportunities a week, 5 to 6 targets every single week. Is going to go a long way in full PPR formats. And we've seen guys in Sean Payton offenses that aren't exactly the lead back be extremely fantasy relevant for fantasy. We can just look back to, go back even a decade. Reggie Bush was really good in New Orleans for a few years from a fantasy standpoint. Alvin Kamara, even with Mark Ingram there, was absolutely fantastic. And I'm not saying McLaughlin is on that level in terms of how talented those players were. And obviously this isn't a Broncos offense that we expect to be fantastic, but he's going to be a guy that's going to have an immediate role. I think there's a path towards him potentially just outplaying Javonte Williams, getting even more work in this offense. And he's a talented player, going to be utilized where we want him to be utilized for fantasy, especially in PPR formats. And if you desperately need running back help, I think McLaughlin's going to be a guy that you could consider starting almost every single week in full PPR formats. So I like him a lot. I think he's to be rostered a lot more right now. Next up, we've got Jordan Mason, who's currently only rostered in 17.3% of fantasy leagues right now. Mason's the clear running back 2 in San Francisco right now, with Elijah Mitchell being set to miss the entire 2024 season, and there are a lot of reports sort of circulating that they might look to just sort of ease the workload just a little bit on Christian McCaffrey this season. Obviously, McCaffrey had over 400 touches last year. They had to use him all the way through the playoffs, all the way through a Super Bowl run here. So McCaffrey's a guy that they're certainly going to want to feature, and he's going to be by far, again, probably the most valuable running back in fantasy as long as he's healthy. But I still think we'll see a little bit more of the RB2 in San Francisco on the field than they have historically. So I think there's a chance that maybe Mason's a decent standalone play and games where the Niners are favored by multiple touchdowns, games like that. I think Mason has a little bit of upside there, but the real value comes with the upside of a potential Christian McCaffrey injury. Obviously, we're never hoping for anybody to get hurt, but if Christian McCaffrey were to go down to a season-ending injury or even just miss a week here or there, I think Jordan Mason would be in line to be a top 10 play in the weeks that McCaffrey's out. And I think him being unrostered is a mistake. If you draft Christian McCaffrey, I think you need to make a very concerted effort to make sure Jordan Mason ends up on your roster. And even if you don't end up with McCaffrey, I think Jordan Mason's a guy that you could certainly roster, keep on the back of your bench, and just consider trading to the McCaffrey owner at some point if you need to, because he is a really great insurance pack if you guys need him. Next, we've got the last running back on this list, another handcuff here in Jaylen Wright, currently only rostered in 23% of ESPN leagues. And I think the thing that might surprise people is I think we could see a little bit more involvement of Jaylen Wright, even in week one, even without an injury to Raheem Mostert or Devon Achane. There have been a lot of quotes coming out of Mike McDaniel just saying, they really want to feature all of their running backs, saying that the guys that are performing really well, they're going to get a lot of touches. And I think that this is a backfield that has three guys that are extremely capable. Obviously, I think it'll be Achane, Mostert, and then Wright in that order. But I think if any one of the top two backs in this offense, Achane or Mostert, were to go down, Wright would see himself right into a role with 10 to 15 touches and an extremely efficient, high-octane offense that would probably make him a top 24 play at the position in any week where that happened. And let's be honest, Devon Achane and Raheem Mostert are not exactly guys that we expect to play a full 17 games. Between the two of them, I bet they'll miss between 5 and 10 games this season, and that's if we're being optimistic, to be honest. So there's going to be several weeks over the course of the year where Jaylen Wright's a really solid play, and it's tough to find that at the running back position, especially when you're looking at the guys only rostered around 20% of the time. So I think Wright should be rostered in effectively every league. If you have one of the Dolphins running backs, he's a great handcuff, and even if you don't, if you want upside of the running back position, I think he can definitely offer that to you guys. Next up, moving on to the wide receiver position here, I'm going to highlight Kahlil Shakir, who just barely made the cut here, currently rostered in 47.3% of ESPN leagues. More and more, I really do believe that Kahlil Shakir is going to be the wide receiver one in Buffalo over the course of the season, and being able to find that potentially on waivers after your draft has happened is something that's really tough to come by, and the upside is just really hard to ignore. He's one of the most talented wide receivers in the NFL after the catch. I believe he led the NFL last season in yards after the catch per reception, so that just highlights how effective he was whenever he was given those opportunities, and we know there's a ton of opportunities for targets in this offense with the departures of Stephon Diggs and Gabe Davis. And there's a very real chance that right out of the gates in week one, Shakir, as the guy that has the most familiarity with this system, the most chemistry with Josh Allen, just comes out and dominates targets in week one. They've got a really great matchup in week one against a absolutely awful defense in Arizona. We could see Kahlil Shakir come out right out of the gates and catch 7 passes for 70 yards and a touchdown, and suddenly he's the number one waiver out of the wide receiver position next week, and he's obviously going to cost you guys a pretty penny if that happens. So beat the crowd there. If he's for whatever reason still available on waivers, I think he absolutely needs to be rostered, and I would certainly be going out of my way to try and get him right now. Next wide receiver on this list is going to be Michael Wilson, who's currently only rostered on 16.8% of leagues. Wilson, he's a talented player that I think is set up for a really solid role in this Cardinals offense with the suspension to Zay Jones for the first 4 games. Michael Wilson is going to be given every opportunity to be the wide receiver 2 in this Cardinals offense. He'll be the number 3 target in the offense behind obviously Marvin Harrison and Trey McBride, but he's a year 2 player who flashed a little bit as a rookie, and those are the kinds of players that we're looking to ascend, and they're over just, in general in fantasy, year 2 wide receivers, they are sort of a cheat code in fantasy. They generally take a significant step forward, and the opportunity is right there for Michael Wilson to do that. You're going to get a full year of Kyler Murray this season, and I think we could see Michael Wilson take that step forward and be a reliable, low-end wide receiver 3 for us in fantasy, and getting that as the wide receiver, a guy that's not being drafted, a guy that's rostered in 1/6 of leagues right now, that's really tough to find. I think he could actually offer some legitimate upside. Again, finds himself in a high-scoring environment in week 1 as well in that matchup with Buffalo. I think he's a prime example of a guy that people would not be shocked at all to see come out and put up a big game in week 1. If that happens, he's suddenly going to cost quite a bit on waivers. So he's a guy I would also try to beat the crowd on. I'd be really happy to have him on the bottom of my bench just to see what happens. And the last wide receiver on this list is going to be Ja'Lynn Polk, currently rostered in just 29.1% of ESPN leagues. I think that the fact of the matter is Polk is probably the only wide receiver in New England that has a legitimate shot at being a true difference maker in 2024. I know Mario Douglas is there. He might even be the best bet to lead the team in targets, but I don't think there's any real ceiling there for Mario Douglas. He could be a guy that catches 5 passes for 50 yards here and there, and you can play in a PPR flex spot if you need to. But if we had to bet on one guy to actually be a difference maker in fantasy the way some rookies can be, I think Ja'Lynn Polk is certainly the guy. Drake May is in line to start at some point over the course of the season as well. That does raise the upside of this entire offense in general. And if Ja'Lynn Polk comes out against Cincinnati in week 1 and puts up a really solid showing, shows that he's running as effectively the clear wide receiver 1 in this offense, even if the stats don't show up. If you look at snap shares, and Ja'Lynn Polk is a guy who was on the field 80% of the time and is running a lot of routes in a team that we do expect to be trailing quite a bit. I think Jaylen Powell could be a really popular waiver ad just because I think he's got the talent. Obviously, playing behind Rome Odunze at UW is by no means an indictment of him being a bad wide receiver. I do like him as a prospect. I think he's a guy that's got a lot of upside. And if this offense hits at all, I think Jaylen Powell's going to be a big difference maker. And he's certainly someone that I'm really happy to get on waivers if I can now before I have to pay a lot for him after he breaks out. And the last player we'll talk about here will be the lone tight end on this list. It's going to be Noah Fant, who's currently rostered in just 7.4% of ESPN leagues. We've seen Noah Fant fantasy relevant before. He's been a top 10 tight end twice, dating back to his days in Denver, where he was by no means ever a part of a good offense. We certainly expect Seattle to be a much better offense than any of the offenses Fant was on in Denver. On top of that, Tyler Lockett is already banged up, potentially opening up more target opportunity here. And beyond that, he's got a new offensive coordinator in Seattle and Ryan Grubb. They're going to run a lot more 3 wide receiver sets. They're going to spread things out. Colby Parkinson and Will Dissly, Noah Fant's primary competition for tight end snaps last season. Those guys are both gone as well. So Fant should see a much larger work role in an offense that should be a little bit more pass friendly. And we know he's got the talent. He's certainly an athletic guy. And we could see a bit of a surprise late career breakout for him. And it's not something that's unheard of. I know for a lot of positions, especially like running back and wide receiver, if you don't put up a really great season early on in your career, it's sort of fair to write those guys off. But you can even just look back to like the last 2 years. You had Evan Ingram break out 2 seasons ago in like year 6 for Jacksonville. You had David Njoku finally break out in year 6 last season. There are a lot of tight ends that sort of just take a while to get up to speed and finally have a really fantasy relevant season. And Noah Fant potentially could do that this season, and it could get off to a great start with what was the best matchup for tight ends last season. Denver, really bad defense against tight ends. I think Noah Fant could come out and have a really good week 1 and then be a really popular waiver ad this season. So that'll do it for the Undrafted Gems video. Again, if you guys have any players I didn't touch on that you wanted me to talk about, feel free to let me know in the comments below. I'll be happy to give you guys my opinion on those guys. Next video, guys, we'll be looking at, I'll just do some recaps of some teams I drafted, especially those higher buy-in ones, show you guys which guys I'm really putting my money behind, and which, show you guys a little bit of a peek behind the curtain, look at the guys that I'm big in, and really did put my money where my mouth was on those guys. So hopefully you guys enjoyed that video. And after that, I'll probably do a Thursday Night Football primer, just get you guys set up for the first week of the season. It should be a lot of fun. We have football in 3 days from when I'm recording this right now. That is super exciting. I'm stoked about that. And it's just going to be a really fun season here. I'm going to keep putting out 4+ videos a week throughout the entire season. So make sure you don't miss that just by making sure you're subscribed to the channel. It'll be all free. I'll be here all year long to help you guys win your leagues, and it's going to be a blast. So yeah, I appreciate you guys. If you made it this far in the video, please do give this a thumbs up as well. It helps me out quite a bit. And yeah, I'm just super stoked and I can't wait for football. So yeah, appreciate you guys, and I'll catch you with the next one. Peace. Thank you guys for watching. If you haven't already, please be sure to subscribe to the channel, like the video, check out these other videos here if you haven't. If you want more content, please feel free to follow me on Twitter @RealSteelFFB. I'll be more active on there as the season goes on. Thanks. Catch you later.